Right, good afternoon. Welcome to BCP Eastern Planning Committee on Friday, the 22nd of May, 2026. If we can first have housekeeping, please.
Thank you, Chair. Please note that this meeting is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the Council website for a minimum of 6 months. The meeting may also be recorded or streamed for live or subsequent broadcast by members of the public, although ultimate discretion in this matter lies with the Chair. For those in the room, please note that if the fire alarm sounds, please exit the building by way of the nearest available signed fire exit route and make your way to the assembly point at the War Memorial in front of the building. Finally, could those in the room keep noise to a minimum and ensure that mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to a silent setting for the duration of the meeting. This includes turning off microphones and turning the volume down completely on laptops. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So item 1 is apologies.
We've received apologies for this meeting from councillors Joe Clements, David Flagg and Mike Tarling.
And item 2 for substitute members?
And no substitute members, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Right, so I'm the current chair, Councillor Paul Hilliard. I'll ask members and officers to introduce themselves.
I'm Councillor Marion Lepedvin. I'm current vice chair of this committee.
Councillor Felicity Rice, Oakdale Ward.
Councillor Patrick Canavan, Buscombe West.
Matt Gillett, Talbot Woods. Toby Slade, Muscliffe and Stratton Park.
Gillian Martin, Boscombe West.
Jocelyn Holbrook, Transport Development Management Team Leader.
George Sanders, Planning Officer.
Frances Summers, Senior Planning Officer and Case Officer for the redevelopment of the Vitality Stadium.
Sanju Timana, Team Leader, Strategic Applications.
Simon Gould, Development Management Manager.
Sorry, Claire Johnston, Democratic Services Clerk to the meeting.
Christiane Tan, Democratic Services.
Okay, thank you. And there are some other officers in the room and online who might be specialists in certain areas we can call on. For the next part of the agenda, I'll hand over to the Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. So we're on to item 3, election of chair for this current forthcoming municipal year 2026-27. So have I any nominations for chair of this committee? Councillor Gillett. And have I a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Martin. Any other nominations? No? Well done, Paul. You are our current and future chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you, members. Item 4 is election of vice chair for the 2026-27 municipal year. So do I have a nomination for vice chair or nominations? Councillor Gillett, do Mike?
Let's nominate Marion.
Thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Martin? And any other nominations for vice chair? No. So again,
thank you, everybody.
Marion. Okay, item 5 is declarations of interest. Do I have any declarations for the members relating to business we're talking about today? No declarations. Thank you. Item 6 is confirmation of the minutes of a meeting from the 16th of April 2026. So you should have all seen those. Was there anything to raise? No. So all happy to approve those minutes? Happy? Accepted. Thank you. So item 7 is public issues. So after the officer presentation, we will hear any public speakers followed by any ward councillors who wish to speak, which leads us on to item 8, scheduled planning applications, and 8A is Vitality Stadium, Kings Park Drive, Bournemouth. So, Ms. Summers.
Wonderful. Hello, everyone. As I said, I'm Frances Summers. I'm the case officer for the redevelopment of the Vitality Stadium. The stadium, for anyone who doesn't know, is the home for Bournemouth Football Club. And that's what we're here today to discuss. So you will probably remember back in January, we were here talking about an enabling works application, which was to discuss the fence line and turnstiles, to look at the outside broadcasting area, foundations for the south stand, infills to the south stand, and a realignment of the cycle and pedestrian path. That was approved, but also that also forms part of this application purely to, brilliant, purely so that it can be read in its, in its entirety, okay? So this application, I wasn't going to read through the description of development, as you can see on that screen. It's rather lengthy. So I want to boil it down for you to what it actually essentially means. So it means what is proposed is a new south stand, infills to the corners, extensions to the east and the north stand, the erection of a fan zone and ticket office, more infills to the west stand, a realignment of the shared path in addition to what's already been approved. And as part of this, there's mitigation, contributions and requirements and management of the park and transport, which I'll come on to later on. But firstly, where are we? We are in Kings Park in Littledown. We've got the Wessex Way. Can you see my cursor? Yeah, the Wessex Way up here. You've got the Weymouth to London railway line down here. And you've got Bournemouth Town Centre to the west. So the stadium's well established within the park setting, which is all of this land here that you can see on this aerial photograph. So this morning we had a site visit, so everyone saw this in real life. I'm just going to take you through the elements of the scheme, and then we'll consider the main issues. And I'll hand over to George for that.
So this part of the presentation will address the main considerations of the application. These revolve around 6 key areas: the economic, social, environmental, the character of Kings Park, the impacts on neighbouring residents, and transport impacts. The headline economic benefits are, as seen on the screen, increased jobs for the construction and operation of the site, as well as an increase in revenue. GVA, or gross value added, is an important consideration of the application and the economic ripple effect on the surrounding area. The increase in footfall and events will positively impact businesses within the immediate area due to wet spend and incremental spend within the varied independent businesses. In summary, the application supports job creation, investment and business growth. The social value gained from the application would be the following 6 criteria as shown on the slide. Contributions and facilitation and improvements to Folkestone Railway Station, the various crossings, parking restrictions in Kings Park, jobs through upskilling and apprenticeships and construction career events, as well as supporting local businesses, music events, improvements for football fans and increased pride within the city. This also includes urban regeneration for improving transport links with investment. The proposal will also include environmental benefits through the additional planting in Kings Park, the energy efficiency of the new sections, improved drainage, overall reduction in light and noise pollution, and by reducing congestion on the surrounding road network through measures to manage unrestricted parking. Further specific examples of benefits include the use of air source heat pumps for the ticket office, security and outside broadcasting buildings, and the inclusion of 24 solar PV panels. The consideration for this proposal is based on all the uses you can see on screen. The primary use of the football stadium is for men's team football matches. This includes for competitions such as the Premier League, as well as any domestic and European Cup games. Additionally to this, there is potential for women's football team matches and community football in the off-season. There is also hospitality, retail and conference-based uses attached to the site. Finally, is the use for music events such as concerts. For music-based events, these will be subject to the submission and agreement of a noise impact assessment. Thank you, Francis.
Thank you, George. Okay, so in terms of the actual built environment then, this shows photos of the West Stand. So hopefully you can see my cursor again. A little infill was approved in January. Basically, they are proposing to infill the rest of this, so ground floor and first floor. Same at this side of the west stand. Okay, so that it doesn't go any higher than the stands are now, and it just merely fills that bit in. Within the west stand, we went and had a look at the changing rooms and the physical, I don't know, basically where they do the stretches and any kind of physio within the within matches as well. And we also seen some hospitality spaces as well. That's all based in the west stand. But other than that, there's not going to be any increase in seating in the west stand. In terms of the south stand then, the existing south stand that we saw this morning, which there's a picture of up here, fairly small in stature, I'd say. It's about 9 metres in height. That will be demolished. It is a temporary stand at present, and it will be demolished to make way for the erection of a new south stand. And here's the plan of that. So that will provide about 2,220 general admission seats. Sorry, the existing stand is 2,220 seats. The new stand is 6,800 seats with 60 elevated wheelchair places. So as I said, the current stand is about 9.2 metres. The new stand is about 26 metres high. Includes concourses, toilets, concessions, a kitchen, the tunnel for ground in the corner that I referenced this morning. That's for the ground staff and emergency vehicles to gain access onto the pitch. On this stand and the other stands that are being changed, there's going to be integrated floodlighting. So underneath the roof panels, and there's the floodlights that are going to be demolished and new ones erected. Like I said, they were going to be cranking over onto the pitch. So that's the south stand. So we walked into the park this morning to try and have a look at sort of what the visual impact of this stand would be. And actually, if I just go back to the slide beforehand, there is, I don't know how well you can see it, but this is a mock-up of how the stand would look from further into Kings Park. And this is it from the bottom of the south car park, okay? So it is going to, it's definitely going to change the outlook. Certainly Kings Park users are going to notice that difference. Urban Design objected to the appearance. They describe it as utilitarian with big blank patches that don't add interest. We've been through the materials several times and we've now got light materials. We're quite happy with the materials. What I do want to see is a central panel to try and break up that big mass. So I've conditioned that. And sort of to offset the impact, the visual impact of the structure, we do have some contributions for improvements to the park, which will hopefully try and screen that even more from throughout the park with the help of, for instance, cherry trees that will line the main routes that people will be using to get to the stadium. And just to explain the relevance of that for anyone who doesn't know, the nickname of the club is the Cherries. So, yeah. We also have hard and soft landscaping proposed because at the minute, you might have noticed as we walked around the stadium, there's quite a lot of greenery. There's the cherry trees along the fence line of the west stand just outside reception. There's hedges. Some of that has to go. The hedges and the trees on the fence line has to go. This is because of safety issues. Okay, so Dorset Police have worked really closely with myself and the club to try and make sure that, given the use of this, it's as safe as possible. So what we can't provide basically is places where weapons could be hidden. So for instance, in hedges. So that right next to the fence, that has to come out. To mitigate for that then, there's planting throughout the car park and around the edges. And I've given a few examples of images. So like I said, cherry trees and some common biztaut, I think that's how you say it, and snow rush. We've also got some public art. So these panels here, now this is indicative. We're not saying that this is what's going to be provided. The details are to be secured by condition, but there will be some public art sort of just to add interest as well to the scheme, which will help mitigate the utilitarian appearance. We also need hostile vehicle mitigation, or HVM. So that's to stop vehicles approaching sort of the public realm or the stadium at speed. So now, in your mind's eye, you might think of this great big concrete block. That's not what hostile vehicle mitigation needs to be. So for instance, these crash blocks down here, not very pretty. So Arsenal football ground, for instance, they've made something interesting, an innovative design out of their hostile vehicle mitigation. And then these examples here, again, big planters. So that is also conditioned. I don't just want bollards all the way along. And again, that'll help mitigate the appearance of the stadium. At the end of the day, though, if I just go back to this, the character of the area is a stadium. We can't get away from that. It is a stadium. Right, in terms of the east stand, the extension will create an addition. This is the north stand, sorry. We'll create an addition. Have I skipped one? Right. Thought I read that wrong. Right. The east stand, that'll create an additional 1,800 seats. The central camera platform is on this stand, and so is the away supporters. Ground level concourses will include toilets, pitchside wheelchair viewing areas will also be provided. And there's a transition space that maintains a segregation between home and away fans. However, the details of that is conditioned as well in the form of someone from the planning department, probably myself, attending a SAG group to understand all of the measures that are put in place for a match day. No additional windows are proposed. The stand height increases from 9.3 metres to 12 metres. That's the actual cladding. We talked about the steel frame, which is a little bit higher this morning, and that extends closer to Middleton Gardens by quite some way. The underside of the stands will remain open for emergency vehicle access. And again, on this stand, floodlighting is included underneath the roofs. Now, I think there's an impact on residents from this stand. It will create some sort of overbearing sense of enclosure, and I've recognised that in my report. I do need to acknowledge that they already look out onto stands and the wall, and it is the front elevation, so it's mainly kitchens, the bedroom, downstairs toilet, for instance, not living rooms. The north stand, that creates an additional 1,200 seats. Again, toilets, food, drink provision on the bottom ground level. No windows proposed. The height will increase from 10 metres to 13 metres. Again, that's the cladding, that's not the steel frames higher. And it'll go closer to Thistle Barrow Road Gardens by 10 metres. So you'll see this picture, we saw it would come out to around about here at height. Those trees, the screening are remaining. And again, the underside of the upper tier will remain open for emergency vehicle access, and floodlighting will be beneath the roof. Again, I've identified an impact on residents here through overbearing and it's creating a sense of enclosure. But again, I have to acknowledge that they already look out onto this stadium, though it is well screened, though the trees will continue to grow and will screen to an extent. The corners will give us about 1,500 seats and include some provision for wheelchair users. And that comes to about 9.9 metres to the top of the cladding. So these extensions to the stadium are not with it. Stadium use is a main town centre use. So in the NPPF, it says that we should be locating main town centre uses in a town centre. But obviously you can't put extensions on a stadium when the stadium isn't in the town centre. But nevertheless, the club did explore alternative sites and they've been discounted. In addition to that, we also explored alternative ways to create the additional capacity for the stadium. And that was by looking at extensions to the west stand, providing more seating in the south stand and more seating in the corners. And again, this slide explains why that's not possible. So extensions to the west stand, for instance, that's the one where reception is and doesn't look out onto residential properties. There would be a loss of income because of the loss of the hospitality suites. And obviously they're doing a lot of work on that at the minute, as we saw this morning. There's a new rule that's come in that means the amount that football clubs in the Premier League, I believe, can spend on players has to be directly related to their income, and that further restricts them. More seating on the south stand, well, that would cause overlooking concerns. If the north and the east stand stayed where it was, could you then look directly into people's houses? And the construction would become much more complex. More seating at the corners, you would not be able to see the pitch because of the sides of the stands. So just making you aware that we have considered alternatives. Another impact is on Kings Park by way of the additional footfall from additional fans and the uplift in tourism. So the socioeconomic report goes into the likely uplift in tourism, and it is quite a lot. So I'm imagining fans coming to the stadium, fans possibly from Europe, and they might look at the park and think that's a nice place to go, and they might go and use the park. If not, there might be a lighting at Folkestone coming through the park. They might be coming and parking at Avonbourne School and walking through the park, or even at the Sovereign Centre and walking through Ashley Road sort of side of the park. So to offset the impact on the park, we've secured 233,500 for the park, which will provide upgrades to Clarence Park Road Play Park and provide some benches and help with the degradation of the routes. Floodlights, I've already mentioned these. They're 35 metres in height at present. They'll continue to be that when the new ones are erected, but they will crank over further to look into the ground. There's no objection from environmental health or ecology on these. And then this is just a brief overview of the ticket office and the fan zone. The ticket office at the minute is behind the away supporters changing rooms, and the away supporters changing rooms isn't big enough, doesn't meet Premier League requirements. And so they need to knock into the ticket office essentially and use that. So they're bringing the ticket office out and under the fan zone. The local businesses will be given the opportunity to have a stand within the fan zone or within the fence line. You know, there's those like concession stands you'll have seen around. So that helps with the impact on the district centres, in addition to the amount of footfall that they're going to get from fans walking to and from the stadium. And I'll hand over to Joss to go into a little bit more detail on transport.
Thank you very much, Francis. Okay, if we start with the baseline. So how do fans currently travel to the stadium? The data provided in the transport assessment shows that 75% of supporters travel via car. When we convert this to numbers, this is 8,050. The transport assessment also highlights that there's a very low existing car occupancy rate, which is only 1.3 people per vehicle, which is very low when compared to other Premier League stadiums. The transport assessment also demonstrates that there's a heavy reliance on on-street car parking in the residential roads, where 67% of car drivers choose to park. On screen, we have the existing modal split between the different modes, such as rail at 3%, bus at 3%, cycle at 2%, and car 75%. So when assessing the data of where season ticket holders live, we know that 22% live within a 15-minute walk of a station. In addition, 52% live within a 5-minute walk of a bus stop. So the expansion of the stadium from 11,286 to approximately 20,500 people could have significant impacts unless properly managed. The transport strategy in support of the application uses a vision-led monitor and manage strategy that focuses on modal shift through encouraging walking, cycling, bus and rail travel. This is in line with national and local policy. The modal shift will be monitored through the travel plan and a transport working group with funding allocated should in the future further mitigation is seen to be required. The overall strategy is to reduce the number of vehicles travelling to the stadium. Those that do choose to travel to the stadium will need to pre-book that parking space, and they'll be encouraged to car share in order to increase that car occupancy. There's off-site existing partnerships with Avonbourne School, and there's also the Sovereign Centre as well, which is promoted for car parking. So we've got, so controlled parking is also to be is proposed on the surrounding roads in order to discourage parking on the residential streets. So the traffic regulation order, the TRO process, is outside of planning and it is subject to full public consultation. However, the applicant has committed funding to the cost of implementing this controlled parking zone, which includes all the signing and lining as well. So the controlled parking zone is essential for this transport strategy to work in order to encourage this modal shift to active and sustainable transport. Okay, when we look at active travel, the transport strategy looks at encouraging walking, and enhanced wayfinding is to be proposed and also secured via condition. The existing Beryl Bay is to be upgraded to a super hub, which can hold 50 bikes or up to 100 scooters. And this will be the largest in BCP, and it will contain signage, which gives full details about how to use the micro-mobility. Furthermore, £50,000 is to be secured in a legal agreement to fund additional Beryl bikes. Next to the Super Hub will be a secure cycle store with a capacity of 154 bikes. Additional Sheffield stands will also be located next to the security hut, the west and south car park, providing 312 parking spaces. In addition, the applicant has agreed to a condition requiring a second secure cycle store once the capacity reaches 80%. And the capacity will be monitored and managed with reports back to the Transport Working Group, reviewing the travel plan targets, and details of the security mechanisms of this cycle store is to be secured via condition. Okay, on to public transport. On match days, there'll be a stopping service at Folkestone. Therefore, there'll be more fans using Folkestone station. Incentives will be offered to those who travel via rail, such as discounts in the fan zone at the stadium, and also discounted rail fares will be promoted, encouraged, so more people will use the rail. Due to the anticipated increase in passengers using the rail, South Western Rail have required mitigation at Folkestone station in order to widen the entry doors, improve circulation space, which involves widening the gap between the ticket hall and the stairs. An additional wayfinding is also required, such as signage leading towards the stadium, and a mitigation of £110,000 has been agreed by the legal agreements. Returning to bus, the operator confirms that there is capacity within the existing network, so we don't need additional public buses. But however, the nearest bus stops have been identified for improvements, such as new shelters and inserting real-time information to assist fans who are travelling via bus. So integrated bus tickets will be developed to offer incentives for match day travel via bus, something based on the Newcastle Magpie Mover strategy, which is where integrated tickets can be purchased when fans are purchasing season tickets. So you pay a low upfront fee, which then gives you free travel for the rest of that season on the network. And currently bus travel is only a 3% mode, and therefore the integrated tickets has a huge potential to significantly increase the number of fans travelling via bus. This in turn will reduce the number of private vehicles travelling to the stadium. We also have a shuttle bus that's proposed to operate from the travel interchange to the stadium, where passengers can alight at the south car park. And this is much closer than any other public bus stops located on Holdenhurst, Christchurch and Ashley Road. And the shuttle bus will assist disabled fans in particular, while there's still the ongoing steps barrier at Folkestone Station, where it's not suitable for all at the moment. And the bus usage and the incentive will be monitored as part of the travel plan, as well as the transport working group. On screen, we have an overview of all the works around Kings Park Drive leading down to Gloucester Road. If we start at the top, which is from Holdenhurst Road, we have a new crossing link, which leads from Kings Park Road down into Kings Park Drive. And that is the allocated cycle route. So that will assist not only pedestrians crossing the road, but also cyclists reaching Kings Park Drive. We also have a second crossing point to which links between the Ashley Road link to, again, basically funnel pedestrians to cross that road, because at the moment they just spill out everywhere across that road network. So the west car park there in red will be amended, where it will be a one-way system and a loop. So it means that vehicles will enter via Holdenhurst Road. There'll be a one-way system and cars will exit as well via Holdenhurst Road. The blue shows the approved realigned cycle path, shared path, and the red western section is proposed to be amended under this application. We have a new footway proposed through the south car park. Well, at the moment, there's no footways through the car park, and you have fans that are walking amongst vehicles. So this is an improvement, and you have the existing also footway on the eastern side where all the additional cycle parking's going, where fans can continue to walk, and that's a very high route as well with footfall. And then when we lead towards Gloucester Road, we have the narrowing of the carriageway with a widened footway, and we have a formalised pedestrian route through, which is on a desire line at the moment. But again, because of that increase in footfall, we're making the applicant's making improvements for pedestrians and cyclists into the Kings Park. Okay, on screen is an image of the existing shared path that crosses Kings Park Drive. And the proposed plan shows the path is moving closer to the hedge. And for this reason, the Highway Authority negotiated a build out to improve visibility for pedestrians and cyclists. Priority is still for vehicles as it is as existing. And on match days, the stewards will be located at the shared path to help pedestrians and cyclists cross. But on match days, there'll be an increase in pedestrians and cyclists. However, there will be a decrease in traffic along Kings Park Drive because the car parks will be pre-booked, and the entrance and exit to the west car park will be from Holdenhurst Road, and the entrance and exit to the south car park via Gloucester Road. And therefore, there will be only a few vehicles crossing for those travelling through the park for other reasons, and the shuttle bus. A red painted surface will be used to highlight the crossing point, as it's no longer going to be located on the raised table. And an additional ramp is to be proposed, which will help slow speeds down on approach. Okay, on screen is an overview of all the off-site improvements which will be delivered by a highway works agreement, the section 278. And in the red, you can see the outline of the controlled parking zone. As I mentioned, this is outside of the planning process, but that's the proposed area. We have the wayfinding routes, which includes from Folkestone Station. We have the shuttle bus, which is shown in blue, the location. We have the location of the bus stop improvements as well, and traffic management via variable message signs to be delivered on the highway. The locations and details are still to be agreed. However, this is just an indicative where it is likely to go. So table 1 on screen shows the the indicative capacity increase when it's likely to be delivered, and the approximate operational date. Against this, I've listed the highway mitigation, at what point the mitigation is scheduled to be delivered. So by August 2027, all of the mitigation will be in place, with the works shown at element D, E and F still to be constructed. So with all the mitigation as discussed, the proposed modal split shows an increase from a 3% mode of bus to 8% and a 3% rail to 6%. The walk road mode is to increase to 18.5% and cycle increase to 3% of all the overall modes. The car passengers is showed to be increased, and when you add the car and the passengers together, it comes to 60.5%, which is much less than the existing 75% we have currently. So we've got the transport, so we've got the travel plan, which will undertake the surveys, and the targets will be monitored and fed back through the transport working group. Thank you, Francis.
Thanks, Joss. Okay, brilliant. Thank you for listening to that. I'll just give a quick summary. I still believe we believe this is not EIA development. Please consider the addendum as well as the report. The addendum changes a few of the conditions, basically to try and make it a bit more concise. It also gives a bit more information on the plan and balance. A new master plan was submitted yesterday. The master plan, it hasn't really changed much apart from the substations look a bit different. And it does actually show a greater separation distance between the dwellings and the stands than what I was measuring. So the assessment within the report remains the same. So just to sum up in terms of policy, the scheme is not compliant with policy CS41 in terms of its impact on neighbours. So that's a partial non-compliance with policy, but it accords with all other policies, and taking the plan as a whole, it's considered the scheme subject to contributions, requirements and conditions, accords with the plan as a whole. And there's no material circumstances that justify a different view. Please also note that Section 106 is not yet agreed, as we've still got some technical plans, basically the technical drawings for the crossings. They still need to be agreed and put in the appendices. So if this is approved, power would need to be delegated to the head of planning for final Section 106 and for those tweaks to the conditions. Overall though, although some disbenefits have been identified in terms of the impact on neighbours, as you'll have read in the report, the benefits outweigh those disbenefits, and as such it's recommended for approval subject to Section 106 contributions, and the scheme has been referred to the Secretary of State in case the Secretary of State needs to call this in. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. So we'll now move to speakers, and first of all, objectors.
Thank you, Chair. We've got two objectors for this meeting. Nick Day is joining us online, and we have also received a statement from Claire Matthews, which I will read out on her behalf, if that's okay. Okay, Francis, if you're able to put up the photos that Mrs. Matthews sent in.
Sorry, bear with me.
That's okay.
Technology. Tell you what I'll do.
There you go. Thank you very much. So just to say, these were sent in by Claire speaking in objection, and obviously they're not necessarily to scale, but it gives you an indication. Good afternoon, councillors. We are unable to address you in person this afternoon due to work commitments, but my husband and I live in Thistlebarry Road and our house backs onto the North Stand. We are season ticket holders and we wholeheartedly support the idea of the club having a bigger stadium. But the scheme before you this afternoon will have an unacceptable and unmitigable permanent impact on our amenity as well as on the amenity of other residents of Thistlebarry Road. Your case officer agrees because she has written the following at paragraph 176 of her report. The impact on neighbours is not policy compliant. The proposal does not fully comply with the aims of policy CS 41, as the increase of the north and east stand do not satisfactorily respect their proximity to residential properties and cause an overbearing effect on residential properties and a sense of enclosure that will be felt all year round. Please see for yourself. The photographs on screen show our existing southerly outlook and the outlook that we will be subjected to for the rest of our lives should you approve this application today. The proposed north stand will be dominant, overbearing and visually oppressive. The applicant's own daylight sunlight report acknowledges that the proposed north stand is only 67% compliant with daylight sunlight guidance, and this itself tells you all you need to know. If this was proposed at the bottom of your garden, we suspect that you would object, and so if you would not be prepared to accept it, please don't force it on us. We have a solution for you which would work for us and which should work for AFCB if they are the community club that they claim to be. Don't refuse the application today. Just defer it and send the message back to the club that you would like them to reduce the height, bulk and mass, including the overhang of the north stand by 3 metres. The club will still have the bigger stadium that they desire overall. The club will not be significantly delayed and the impacts on us will be reduced to something that we could live with. Following legal advice today, if the application is approved as it stands, we will have no option but to investigate judicially reviewing the decision, which if successful will delay the club much more than a deferral. We are not being unreasonable, but we just need your support today to force the club to reconsider the permanent and damaging impacts that the North Stand will have on resident amenity that will undoubtedly arise if you approve this. Thank you. And then we have Mr. Nick Day, who is joining us on Teams. So if you're able to put your camera on, please. Thank you, Mr. Day. Whenever you're ready.
Hi there, thanks everyone. Let me just bring up my notes. There we go. So yeah, good afternoon everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Nick, and this is my wife Kat, and we live in Middleton Gardens with our little boy Travis, who's at Avonwood School. We've lived next to AFCB's ground since 2012, when our houses were built, and throughout that time I've genuinely enjoyed living beside the stadium and being a part of the wider community around the club. When our homes were built, AFCB were in League One. They previously sold the stadium and the surrounding land, including the land that our homes were built on. And I don't think any of us honestly thought, ourselves and also fans and probably AFCB alike, honestly could have seen or anticipated the extraordinary rise that they've had over the last 14 years. I'd like to begin by highlighting really clearly that I fully support the continued growth and success of the club. I'm delighted to see AFCB establish itself in the Premier League, and I congratulate everyone involved on securing European football this week. And I'm really excited to see the stadium develop. My objection is not to the expansion of the stadium itself, but specifically to the current design and positioning of the proposed East Stand. So I think the South Stand and the corners and everything else looks awesome. But yeah, that's kind of my focus here. As residents, the only thing we've consistently asked for throughout this process is that the development is carried out sensitively and with appropriate regard for the impact on our neighbouring community. At present, although we live beside the football stadium, there remains a reasonable sense of space between our homes and the existing stand. The proposed development would increase the height of the East Stand by between 3 and 4 metres and move it around 8 metres closer to our homes. And particularly it's that 8 metres in proximity towards our homes that's going to be really impactful to us. I shall, let me just share my screen, bear with. Right, where are my notes gone? Here we go. So yes, here's a photo from our kitchen and dining room, and yeah, we've also got one there from our bedroom as well. So I'll go back up to this one. So as you can see, it's not picturesque, but we love it here. The space and light provided by the stand means that we still enjoy our lives and get a decent light and sort of enough reprieve from the stadium that it's cool living here. The new design would mean that we will no longer be able to see the sky from our windows, and BCP's light assessor confirmed that the light into our home could be reduced by up to 30% in these living spaces. And I think most people would probably be pretty upset with that if they're in our shoes. Ordinarily, with any other development project, planning law would be protecting us from this sort of impact and the claustrophobic, overbearing and oppressive living environment that it will bring, and as is mentioned in the Planning Committee's report. Where am I in my notes? So I just want to highlight, if it was just the height that we were talking about here, going up 3 to 4 meters, that's not as much of a concern. I could probably understand that, but the fact it's coming 8 meters closer, combined with the height as well, is going to have a massive impact on us. So it's that proximity that's really going to change things for our community. Importantly, BCP Planning Committee's own report acknowledges the significant adverse impact this will have. If you look on page 28, the report states that my property would experience significant adverse effects and a sense of enclosure, which is contrary to Planning Policy 7.10, which is designed to protect people from these sorts of things. On page 41, the report further recognises that several homes, including my own, which are due to experience up to a 30% reduction in natural light, as concluded by AFCB's light assessor. And the report concludes that given the increase in height and proximity of the structure from the stand, even with the mitigation measures such as lighter materials and the open steel structure, there would still be a sense of enclosure for the affected properties that no mitigation could reduce. Again, looking at the Planning Committee's report, paragraph 176, it highlights the proposal does not fully comply with the aims of Planning Policy CS41, which is designed to protect people when it comes to visual amenity and imposing structure matters, as this increase of the stand does not satisfactorily respect the proximity of residential properties and cause an overbearing effect on residential properties and a sense of enclosure that will be felt all year round. So those are not my words. They are the conclusions of the Council Planning Committee's planning officers, confirming that this will have a massive impact and it's not in adhering with the planning policy designed to protect residents. Throughout this process, residents have consistently highlighted that what we believe is a reasonable compromise, a solution that would allow AFCB to achieve its ambitions for increased capacity and commercial growth, while significantly reducing the impacts on neighbouring homes. That achievable win-win alternative would involve a greater focus on the expansion of the West Stand, including potentially increasing it to the same height as the new South Stand, for example. From our understanding, this could achieve comparable additional capacity without creating the same level of harm for nearby residents. We understand that the club may consider this option less commercially attractive due to the costs and the disruption associated with altering a recently renovated stand and its operations and the facilities within. However, that remains a commercial choice by AFCB rather than a planning constraint, and I don't think it's right that residents bear the burden of that commercial decision. AFCB owners and revenue streams are far more capable of absorbing any negative impact from this project than the residents are. For that reason, I'm disappointed that a more balanced solution has not been pursued more fully, particularly when the Planning Committee's own report recognises the substantial harm the current proposal will cause on the neighbouring properties like my own. A couple of years ago, I had some plans drawn up for a loft conversion, and I was informed that a front-facing dormer on my house would not be permissible under planning laws, as it would overlook AFCB's ground. I would simply ask that planning policy is applied consistently and fairly for all parties, please. If approval is ultimately granted today, despite the acknowledged impacts, then I believe it would be reasonable and essential for it to be granted on the proviso and the conditions similar to the Section 106 agreement, that AFCB provide appropriate compensation for the households impacted, particularly in relation to loss of amenity, reduced quality of life, and the financial implications should residents eventually feel compelled to move. I believe for most people, if faced with a similar proposal immediately beside their home, would seek the same kind of fair, workable compromise. Finally, I'd like to raise an ongoing issue relating to parking on match days. Middleton Gardens residents have increasingly experienced vehicles blocking or parking on our driveway. I've got a photo here, so it's just in front of the gates there, which come onto Thistlebarrow Road. Yeah, I'm still sharing the screen. So this has been happening increasingly more on match days. And blocking our entrance, which is required because we have some vulnerable people living here who need access to ambulances on a semi-regular basis. Unfortunately, there's been some incidents of verbal and physical abuse when neighbours have challenged this behaviour. This chap particularly was very abusive and stole my neighbour's phone and threw it in a bush when they tried to take photos of the parking. We would therefore appreciate consideration being given to including our driveway more clearly within the parking restriction enforcement arrangements, please. So to conclude, I want to reiterate, I really support the club's continued development and success. Lots of the things shown today are super exciting, and we're equally as excited about it as other fans and the community. But I just think there's a much better win-win outcome here, or a way that can support us as residents in a more equitable solution. However, yeah, as I said, I don't believe the East Stand proposal represents the right solution in its present form, and I respectfully ask the committee to either seek a revised design with a greater emphasis on alternative expansion options which are available here, or to ensure meaningful compensation for the residents affected. As I said, I note that BCP were successful in working with AFCB on a Section 106 agreement to attain funds to mitigate the negative impacts that this project is having on the community, and a similar agreement seems a logical conclusion for residents if AFCB are making the commercial decision to not opt for the win-win solution that's available of expanding the West Stand. Thank you for your time today. I really hope BCP councillors and AFCB can work with us to achieve a mutually beneficial, equitable outcome for this project that we're all really excited about. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Day. So if you can put your screen off and mic off, thank you. And now we go to the applicant, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we have Peter Lamb, who is the agent from Savills, and Mr. Jim Frivola, who is the Director of Business for AFCB. And I believe they're going to do a joint statement to the committee.
Thank you. On behalf of Bill Foley and our investors and our entire club, thank you to the chair and the committee and the council members here today, and Frances and her team, and Jocelyn and everybody that's worked with us on this project. We thought we would start off with a video and then kind of talk through our plan.
Let's see.
And a special season for this man and his players. The club's 125th. They're eyeing Europe. And a special season for this man and his players. The club's 125th anniversary. He's onside! He's done it! It's absolutely unbelievable! Once again, be aiming to keep pace with the very best sides in the country.
Breaking news in sport that AFC Bournemouth had lost their fight to avoid going into administration.
Just over 6 years after the club almost fell out of the Football League, a win at Bolton Wanderers on Monday the 27th of April could take them to the Premier League for the first time in the club's history.
That will do it. They've gone down fighting, but they've left themselves too much to do. Billy, left footed, it's a cheeky one. AFC Bournemouth now have new owners led by Bill Fonzie, the Las Vegas businessman and philanthropist.
We won't be relegated. I guarantee it.
They just ball in. Says James. I think today I'm going to run out of superlatives to describe this training ground.
I'm pleased to inform you that we have come to terms on the acquisition of Vitality Stadium.
I thought that video was helpful as we were putting it together. Actually, for something unrelated to today, we have a different version that we're hoping to share on Sunday. But you know, the club's obviously been around 126 years. I've only been around 3.5 years in our group's involvement. But from the dire days of administration and starting at -17 and almost going out of business. Talking about relegation is not fun, and it's a reality. So I wanted to at least kind of capture the history of where we've been, and hopefully that we won't ever get there. 3.5 years ago, we set out to stabilize the team. I think we invested on the pitch, in the manager, the coach, the performance center, investing to bring the stadium back, and now our plan to redevelop it. We've invested in the club in the area, but we've also adopted it as home. So Bill's got a home here. I've moved here and relocated here. Bill's here often. Our investors come regularly. In fact, one of our biggest groups was just here a few nights ago for the Man City match. Our desire to keep it at Kings Park was really important. We considered a lot of different options and realized this was the best home for our club and our stadium. We play in the biggest league in the world, and with that comes great responsibility, but also a great opportunity. Including potentially playing in Europe. It helps the profile not of just AFC Bournemouth, but also BCP as well. And it's absolutely, and it's not cliche, but it's absolutely a commercial tourism for the area and the region globally every match day. And that's broadcast globally to billions. And that's only when you're in the Premier League. If you get relegated down to the championship, it doesn't get you that kind of profile. That can change in the blink of an eye, and we've been relegated. We've seen what that can do and how hard it is to get back up. And it's a real topic. If you just ask some of the bigger clubs in the league today and what they're facing on Sunday, it's not fun, and it's not meant to poke fun, but it's a reality that any club can face. So you've got to be as prepared as you can. And I think Francis or maybe Jocelyn, I'm not sure who mentioned it, but the reality of squad cost ratio, which is the new rule that's going into effect this year, which says you can only invest 85% of your income into the club. And that puts us at a severe disadvantage, particularly on match day income with the smallest stadium in the league. Expanding the stadium, and I'm not trying to be dramatic, it's not anything but reality. It has to happen. If it does not happen, I don't think you'll ever see an 11,286 seat stadium in the Premier League again, if it ever would go away. So it's not meant to be doom and gloom. I just think the reality of the world of football is making it more and more challenging. We've got to increase our capacity. Through private investment, we can do that. We can do amazing things. We can improve the community. We can improve BCP And the thought that went into, and I want to commend Francis and Jocelyn and everybody involved in the, things along the lines of the transport study and the CPZ and all the things that Peter knows way more about than I ever will, although I feel like I've immersed myself pretty darn well in it. The improvements and were thoughtful questions. And I know we went through times where maybe we thought the meeting might be earlier, but we were very appreciative of the thought and care that you guys put into this. So I want to acknowledge that up front. But just as important, we've got to get 9,000 more supporters in the building, not just for the revenue that it means, that's important as we talked about, but it's right for the club, it's right for the town. The families that can't go together now, we've got season ticket holders that would love to bring their kids, their partner, their grandparents, their mom and dad. We've got to be able to figure out a way to do that. And by getting the ground improved and expanded, absolutely can do that. And then improving the fan experience. It's an ambitious plan, but it's actually a reality. It's already something that we're excited to do. We've got a team, behind us and with us, and you guys saw the works already being done on the enabling works and even things like the pitch today. We're ready to execute this plan. We understand planning is a process and appreciate your dedication to the cadence at which you've gone through it, but timing is critical. European football is a reality for us, and we need the capacity as badly as we can. Even the two corners that we would have for this season would put us over the top, I think, with our requirements for UEFA and how we can, take advantage of being in at least the Europa League and maybe greater things after Sunday. I'll wrap up and I'll pass to Peter, but Bournemouth is a special place. I've made it my home for 3.5 years. I live here. I was talking today about how amazing the weather's going to be this summer, and I'm looking forward to being out at that stadium every day, making sure it gets completed with our team on time. Other towns and clubs are desperate for what we have. They're desperate to be in the Premier League. They're desperate for that opportunity. And I would hate for Bournemouth to lose that opportunity, because I really don't think we can be there without 11,000 seats going to 20,000. I think it's absolutely critical in this day and age. So as the video ended, it said, "Together anything is possible." And I'm here to ask you to do this together with us. So thank you. Turn it over to Peter.
Leave it on and I'll
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks. Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. I'm Peter Lamb, planner at Savills. We've been working with the club on this project for some 15 months now, and it's the product of 15 months of intensive engagement and robust engagement with the council's regulatory teams, various consultees and interest groups. And we're delighted that we've got a recommendation for approval. It's a real milestone. It's really important to say that this proposal has been thoroughly tested from the very outset. We've been challenged and scrutinised by the council and its officers all the way through, and we've been able to respond to that and address issues and get to the position we're in now. That's really important, and it's really important that this is supported by high quality technical work, and you can be confident that all the impacts have been properly assessed. I today would just like to touch on 3 areas of particular significance for me. One's about public benefits, a little bit about traffic and parking, and then obviously about the relationship with immediate neighbours. As officers have said, this project is going to deliver significant socioeconomic benefits, and there's been many letters of support which recognise that, and I know you all understand that. It's going to create more jobs during the construction phase and the operational phase. And what's really good so far is, for the contracts that have been placed, we've got local companies doing the majority of the work. We've got Reed Steel, Christchurch-based Reed Steel. We've got RM Fabrications from Three-Legged Cross, Poole-based Stroud and Joinery, Hampshire-based Southern Structures, Ferndown-based Interiors Company, Bournemouth White Lining, and several construction and project managers and other surveyors. So already that is happening with the enabling works, and that will increase as the project goes into the next phase. We're going to have apprenticeship opportunities, training, education opportunities during the construction period, but also once the scheme is operational, and that's really important. There's going to be increased spending on fans by fans. There's going to be more away fans, and that's going to have a positive impact on the area. I think what's really important, particularly with the success of European football, is Bournemouth as a place and a destination. It's going to gain huge exposure on the international scale. You're going to have supporters from European clubs. They're going to be travelling to Bournemouth for the first time to experience football at Vitality Stadium. They'll be really excited about that. Many may not have come or paid much attention to Bournemouth in the past. You know, the club's estimating that with its position in the Europa League next year, that could create around 45,000 additional spectator visits across a minimum of 4 home fixtures. And that doesn't even include the additional staff, media, broadcaster, UEFA delegates that will come with that. And that's going to be people coming and staying for a period of time in Bournemouth and spending money in the local economy. You know, and qualifying for Europe it doesn't simply mean more football. It would be FC Bournemouth's first European campaign, and it's going to put the club on the European stage, and it's going to mean a boost in tourism, and I think that's really, really important. As Jim mentioned, more seats is going to allow more existing ticket holders to bring friends and family, and that's something that's really important about the future of the younger generation of Cherry supporters, and that's something the club is very keen to see happening. Through this process, there's been some excellent work with the coastal bids, the Sovereign Centre, the club really trying to get involved in what's happening in Boscombe, and that's going to grow as the stadium expands. The transport strategy is directing people to park at the Sovereign Centre. We're anticipating greater footfall into the Boscombe precinct. I know that's really important for local people and businesses. The AFC Bournemouth Community Sports Trust, many of you know the good work that does. And this is going to act as a platform to expand that work it does in terms of the profile of the club and also the facilities that the club is going to be able to offer to host people who are working in that trust. You know, it's the infrastructure and space that the charity needs to scale. On traffic and parking, you know, the club accepts there have been limited requirements to manage traffic and parking on site to date, although since the enabling works, many of you will know there's been significant efforts by the club to improve the way that people are travelling to the stadium and the car parks are being managed. And there have been issues of illegal parking and inconsiderate parking in the past, and you know, the club understands that. And it's really important to the club that it improves that situation. It's been working closely with the Highways Authority and the other stakeholders, and it needs to increase travel by sustainable modes. That's really, really important, and increase the number of people that come in each car, because people will continue to drive as well. It involves a combination of carrot and stick measures, working together to achieve change in travel behaviour over time. And the significant funding has been committed towards that, you know, and that is going to make it happen. The club is heavily invested in the outcome of this because it's about the fan experience and the journey of getting to the stadium. It needs to work. It needs to be enjoyable as part of the experience of coming and watching a game. And it's going to continue to work with local community and stakeholders. The Transport Working Group is an excellent example of that. There's many local stakeholders going to be on there. There's money committed to that to make sure it has teeth. That will be a group of people, organisations that meets and be able to look at what's happening, make decisions, adapt, pivot to make sure that things are running smoothly and that people are able to get to and from the stadium, and that's not causing problems for local residents. And we've also got the events day control parking zone. That's really important. That's gonna help with parking issues locally, and there is money committed towards that. The club is paying for various items so that people won't be paying for permits, and that's a really important part of the strategy. So just if I may, my final few seconds just on the amenity point. We know that it's important the relationship with the residents and the properties they're in, and I think Jim's mentioned it. The decision to stay at Vitality and expand, you know, that's been reached after a thorough assessment of the options available. But I mean, it's the ancestral home of the club, and that's very obvious. But there are no other alternative locations where this size of stadium with the requirements can go. BCP is heavily constrained, we know that. So this is a logical place, and that's been tested for expansion. It's not viable to redevelop the West Stand, as Jim has touched on. It's the operational and functional heart of the stadium. It's got all the facilities, the media, the hospitality, the broadcasting, the operational facilities. And you can't temporarily relocate that. Otherwise, it will fundamentally impact on the club's ability to comply with the Premier League requirements. You know, that's an important part of why we're here today with the expansion project that we've got. And we've got a phased approach to it, you know, and that avoids material interventions or closure to the West Stand. And it's really important in terms of the revenue stream, which enables the club to continue to operate and succeed. And as Jim touched on, the Premier League's cost ratio rules which are introduced, that's really, really important. In simple terms, you know, the club's ability to invest in the playing squad is now explicitly constrained by the income it generates, and matchday hospitality revenues are a core component of that. I'm going to, yeah, sorry, the video at the start threw us out slightly with the timing on that. Yeah, so, you know, I would just conclude on that by saying, you know, there's obviously a reason why why we've got the development in front of us today, and why we've got the expanded South Stand and the East and the North, and I'm sure the discussion can touch on that further. I just like to sweep up a couple of small points from the deputation, if I may, because it is important that everyone understands the accurate figures. I think just in terms of the height of the East Stand at the rear of the facade, Frances in her reporting has mentioned 12. It's actually 13.5, so just a little bit higher, but we just want you to be aware of that. And in relation to the deputation about the distance from the eastern boundary, we just want to clarify, and this was marked out on the ground today as part of the site visit. The rear facade of that East Stand, although it does kind of kink round as it goes along that boundary, it's actually only extending 4.8 metres further back from the current facade. Okay, so just the number that was mentioned was 8. That's important, I think.
Okay,
that you understand that.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
So if we now move to ward councillors.
Thank you, Chair. The first ward councillor that we have registered to speak is Councillor Lawrence Williams, who's here in the room. If you'd like to take a seat, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, members, and thank you for the opportunity to speak this afternoon rather. I've been a ward councillor for Littledown and Iford for the last 16 years. And during that time, I've had my ups and downs with the club for various reasons. I do, however, congratulate them on their recent success and wish them well with it. I'd also like to say at this point, I'm speaking for both myself and for Bobby Dove, the other councillor for Littledown and Iford. I'd like to congratulate Nick and Claire for their presentations. I probably should have got the two of them together at some point, but I have spoken with them individually and back what they say wholly. Middleton Gardens in particular is a worry because they are avid football fans, all of them. They bought the property from AFC Bournemouth's property company at the time and thought they were there to enjoy their current view for life. But that's not to be so. Also Thistlebarrow, I visited the rear of Claire's garden and I couldn't believe the height it's going to go to. And when I saw the picture she showed us, I wouldn't want to live with that. I've lived 2 roads away in Leeson Road for the last 45 years, so I know, I've seen the club grow. I bought my house on a match day. There was one other car parked in the road and they were bottom of the 4th division at the time. So I've seen them go up. I've also seen the stadium come down, turn it round and rebuild it facing the other way. So the stadium isn't what it was when I bought my house, and nor were some of the other properties. I've got a number of things I've written down during the presentations. The financial benefit is not local. There's only 1 or 2 businesses, a pub around the corner, and probably the odd cafe that's going to benefit from fans, certainly. There are, however, numerous benefits for the town centre, but I'm only interested in my residents. I support the club, but I very, very much so support my residents too. And for them, I think they're getting a raw deal. Even if we get residents parking, the chances are that people are going to still park there and be happy to pay the fine as a parking fee. So that needs to be looked at quite closely, I think. So the transport plan is approximately a mile radius of the stadium, I understand, or that's the proposal. That's going to shift a lot of cars into areas that can't really take them. I mean, the other end of my ward in Iford, for instance, don't currently get parked cars, but they certainly will if there's a mile limit. So I'm grateful there's a proposal for a zone. I really am. Most of my residents are very grateful for that too. However, I'm concerned for where cars shift to. I know that they want people to take buses, walk, take trains, but a lot of people I see parking, certainly in my road, are quite elderly, and that's about as far as they can walk from their car to the ground, which isn't a long way actually. Some months ago, we were told that it's going to be another year before this plan comes to fruition because there was a lot of things that weren't right. And then all of a sudden, pressures are put and suddenly there's a plan before us. And it's got flaws in it. And planning officer herself has said that there's flaws in it. And I, for one, am very unhappy with those flaws because my residents are going to suffer significantly and financially from the club's success. I'd like to touch on a couple of other areas. Noise pollution was mentioned. The other evening, there was a constant drumming at 10 o'clock at night coming from the ground. There were pyrotechnics going off from the stands, and that's not unusual. That's happened a few times. That's a fire risk, and the club needs to look at that. We need some consideration from fans. I don't know how you get that, but we need that consideration. Litters thrown in people's gardens. I had a chap from Harewood Avenue got in touch with me this week to say he's often throwing litter away. Can I take as long as they did? It's an issue. I am actually going to close because all I'm going to do is be very negative, and I think you've heard enough of that. So thank you for listening. I hope that you can find it in your hearts to support the people of Middleton Gardens and Thistleborough Road and the greater Littledown area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
The second ward councillor registered speakers, Councillor Sharon Carr-Brown, but she's not able to attend, so I have a statement to read out on her behalf. The statement from Councillor Carr-Brown reads as follows. I've always supported the expansion of AFC Bournemouth's ground in principle and am pleased that the council and club have been able to get to a point where this application is recommended for approval. I'd like to thank the officers who've worked so hard on this. There's no doubt that the progress the club has made in recent years consolidating its place in the Premier League and now entering European football is a boon to our town and will bring important economic benefits. I declare an interest as a fan, and I am writing this as I watched the match against City that we so nearly won. I fully support the stadium staying where it is, in the heart of the town, keeping its identity as a community club and supporting local businesses. Not only is it its historic home, but there's a clear economic and social value benefit from this scheme, and I welcome that for my area. My concern as a ward councillor has always been around traffic management and parking issues. This hugely affects my residents on match days with illegal and inconsiderate parking everywhere and emergency service access even impeded at times. The high levels of traffic create gridlock around the ground and surrounding roads for many hours. The answer to this is a modal shift away from car use and towards walking, wheeling and public transport. I welcome the proposals for discounted bus and rail tickets, the creation of new bus stops and a shuttle bus between the ground and Bournemouth railway station. New pedestrian crossings will aid access for those walking, and a super cycle hub and barrel bike parklet will encourage cycling. The club's communications efforts to promote a new travel culture will be key, and I welcome the input that ward councillors can have through the new transport working group. I think that more than just the immediate ward councillors should be considered for membership of this group, as many wards are affected by travel issues. I welcome the money secured for the underpass that connects Queen's Park to King's Park and is already the site of the AFC Bournemouth mural that celebrates the club and its hometown. Parking is my residents' main concern, and there are measures in this that aim to reduce the negative impact on match days. I welcome the 4-year period for the club covering the CPZ setup and permits, although I'm not sure how far 2,000 permits will stretch. It's absolutely right that local people shouldn't have to pay for these, at least for 4 years, and I welcome this from the club. The working group will be key to making the distribution of permits fair and effective. Residents in Charminster also don't always have drives or adequate off-street parking, and poorly implemented CPZ could lead to displacement in other nearby areas. Enforcement will be key, and I trust the money secured for this will be adequate. The Transport Working Group will need to be very proactive, have good data and the power to challenge decisions where community feedback is clear and consistent. It's accepted that culture change takes time, effort and good faith to succeed. Ultimately, the hope is that fans will use public transport, cycling and walking as the principal ways to reach the stadium, and so parking enforcement, CPZs and the like won't be needed as much. This is the aim of the modal shift that I hope the club will wholeheartedly support, and is the only real long-term answer to the travel issues we all face in the 21st century.
Okay, and last ward councillor.
Sorry, we do have two more ward councillors. We have next is Councillor Alistair Keddy, who is here in the room in person, if you'd like to come and take a seat. And sorry, following that, Chair, we have Councillor Eleanor Pollini, who just...
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair and members, for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I'm Councillor Alistair Keddy, and I'm Ward Councillor for Queen's Park and Charminster. As many have expressed already today, I think it's fantastic that we have a successful Premier League football club in the heart of our area. I also want this stadium expansion to be a success, but not at the cost of impact to resident and community amenity. What we decide here today will affect our residents for years, even decades, and it's essential that we begin on a strong footing, putting our residents and communities front and centre. With that in mind, I would like to focus on transport and parking impacts for my residents in the Queen's Park and Charminster area. The officer report specifies a resident parking zone that would be within a radius of 1.25k from the stadium. I attended the site visit this morning. I'm in the Malmesbury Park area of Charminster. It took me 11 minutes to walk from my house to the stadium. I find that on match days, we frequently get a high volume of visitors parking, often inconsiderately, unfortunately. The residents' parking zone of 1.25k would not cover the bulk of Charminster below Bennett Road, which is already a popular place for people to park on match days. Really, I think if we are going to have a residents' parking zone area, we need to cover a 15-minute walk, which is more like a 1.5 kilometre radius. And I would ask members to consider amending that as a condition. Within 1.5 kilometres of the site, there are pockets of severe social deprivation as indexed by the Index of Multiple Deprivation statistics. While I welcome a 4-year envelope for the funding of parking permits for residents, these deprived areas will not be able to afford these permits today, tomorrow, in 4 years or 10 years. The impact on residents, as set out in paragraph 274 of the officer's report, permit payment would be unfair and impactful on such residents' amenity. The first for years defers this unfair impact rather than finding a sustainable long-term solution. I do not believe that residents should have to pay for these permits due to the stadium expansion at any point in the future. And I would also ask members to consider asking the club to cover the cost of these payments through the Sustainable Travel Fund, which would be administered by the Transport Working Group as set out. We have other expanding the radius to 1.5 kilometres would also incorporate some key meeting points for people. We have the Avon Social Club on Avon Road, which would be on the edge of the 1.25. People park to visit, meet up with their friends, and then walk to the stadium from there. The same is also true of the Woodpecker Cafe in Queen's Park Golf Club, which also has a car park which could be utilised. But I think we need to be more ambitious with the scope and range of the parking zone, and also how it is funded so that we don't impact residents today, tomorrow, or in 4 years. With regard to the Transport Working Group, I would just like it confirmed that ward councillors will have membership. This is stated in the report, but not stated within the travel plan. And in terms of the Sustainable Travel Fund, which is set out in the travel plan on 6.11, the amount that is going to be contributed to this fund is currently unspecified. It's also unspecified whether this would be a one-off payment or if it will be an annual contribution. This should be set, the amount of funding should be set before the application is granted, otherwise we lose our leverage. Why am I going to donate hundreds of thousands of pounds when I've been granted the right to continue? I would respectfully ask members to consider these items, and I was particularly heartened to hear the applicant's view that this application can improve our communities and improve BCP. With these recommendations, I think that is absolutely achievable. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Last but not least.
Thank you, Jake. Yes, last but not least, we have councillor Connolly joining us online.
Thank you very much. And I want to be clear that, like others, I am very supportive of the club's success and the stadium expansion, a big family of Cherries fans, but I am here as a ward councillor for Boscombe and Folkestone. So there's three things that really worry me that I beg the committee will take into account and reflect in the conditions you attach to any permission. So the first is clearly parking. So as we've heard, currently 67% park on the surrounding roads, and the paper notes a shortfall of 845 parking spaces compared to what would be needed. So in my view, the plans are too reliant on this culture change to reduce numbers driving. And I agree this modal shift is needed, but at least for the first few years, large numbers will still be driving across BCP, and this reality must be reflected, whatever the long-term aspiration is. So I'm really worried about the proposed parking zone of, I think it's 1.25 kilometres around the stadium. Residents in the area have made clear in that recent consultation that they do not want permit parking. And to be frank, Boscombe and Folkestone is not an area where people will be able to afford permits, and the permit scheme risks pricing residents out of the area, which would be an absolutely unacceptable outcome. I'm also worried about people parking just outside the parking zone, affecting surrounding streets that already have their challenges. And I'm worried about the impact on businesses, such as on Christchurch Road, from permit parking being introduced on surrounding streets. So therefore, the design of this parking zone is going to be extremely important for the area. So I'd like to leave a few thoughts on that with the committee. First, can you confirm that the surrounding ward councillors be involved in the design of the parking zone and on the Transport Working Group? Secondly, I welcome the 4 years of supporting funding for parking permits, but I share the comments of Councillor Keddy that residents in my area won't be able to afford them in 4 years, so it's just postponing the impact. So please can you make the condition that the club continues to support permits for longer than 4 years, even if the number of permits can be negotiable and based on observed behaviour in discussion with the Transport Working Group. Third, in my view, parking permits should only be on match days or other relevant days. Making it year-round restrictions would be completely excessive. So I hope that's not pursued. And then fourth, on a park and ride, can I ask why there are no plans for a temporary match day park and ride for the initial years? For example, a local school field near the Wessex Way and a shuttle bus to it. I don't personally see the value in the shuttle bus from one train station to another on the same train line, especially not after the lifts are installed at Folkestone Station, but I would see the point of a shuttle bus to a designated parking site. Secondly, that brings me to Folkestone Station. It's clearly the best route to access the stadium other than by car. But we've just heard about the number of increase in fans. I welcome the plans to expand the width of the doors, but to be blunt, there are no toilets or other services at Folkestone Station. And I already receive complaints about urination on Kings Park Drive on match days and other places. So I'm really worried about large numbers of fans using the station with there being no toilets between a train and the stadium. So can the committee please consider if toilet provisions can be made near the station or in Kings Park, and at the very least some provision for cleaning the station platform after match days. And the final point I wanted to make was that I believe a greater contribution to the community would help actually realise some of these benefits to the local economy that we hear about. So I welcome the proposed contribution to Kings Park, so some street furniture and the play park, and I ask that this be extended to support Folkestone more broadly, such as the facade of the station itself, Folkestone Green opposite the exit, and the route from the station to the stadium along Christchurch Road. I'd be happy to help advise on where relatively small amounts for the football club could absolutely transform the appearance of the area. If we really are about to get a lot more visitors and a benefit to the local economy, please can you consider the attractiveness and experience of visiting the wider Folkestone and Boscombe area rather than just Kings Park? Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. So if I can ask the officers just to come back on points from conversations.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm just going to share my screen. Me and technology are not friends today. Keep clicking the wrong buttons. Right, thanks for bearing with me there. First, want to touch on policy, just to make sure that this is crystal clear. Oh, it's not moving, hang on. Get to the right slide. Okay, 710, this is Safe Policy 710. This was, I think Nick mentioned this policy, that it's contrary, the scheme is contrary to this policy in terms of impact on neighbours. Just to be clear, this is, the report does not say that it's contrary to this policy, because this policy also allows that for the benefits of the scheme to be weighed against the harm. And the report says that the benefits outweigh the harm. There is conflict, partial conflict with CS41, and that is because it doesn't respect its surroundings in terms of the impact on neighbours. Another couple of points. If I go to this screen, this screen shows you the phasing that's proposed, and very much the conditions in the section 106 are based on these phases. Please ignore the dates, because the dates could change, but essentially the capacity increase and the order in which it's being extended, that's sort of set in stone. So in terms of parking permits, it's actually 5 years, not 4 years. And the 5 years would start when the CPZ was in place, which we expect to be, I think, phase B, probably before phase B. Essentially, it'll take about 55 weeks to get that in place. But up until that time, we've only got an increase of around about 800. The picture that was sent in by the lady on 37 Thistlebarrow. I have actually seen that before. She put that in her response, but I don't think that it's exactly, well, it's not to scale, and I just don't want people getting too hung up on that picture. Essentially, you can see I might have a picture here. You've seen it today, and you can see these steel bands. It'll be about 2 meters below. It'll go up to about 2 meters below that. Okay. We'll come to daylight sunlight if anyone wants to go in terms of technical details. We do have the person who did an independent review of the daylight sunlight assessment online. Essentially, the headline is that it's compliant with BRE guidelines. And in terms of the policy test for that, it is paragraph 130 of the NPPF. And it does allow for a flexible application of these guidelines. In terms of the board councillors being involved in the transport working group, that is written into the section 106. Antisocial behaviour, well, there's toilets within the stadium itself. The Dorset Police have said that they don't want toilets or temporary portaloos or anything like that on the route anywhere, because that could cause significant security issues. I do recognise, though, Folkestone Station does not have a toilet, which is not helpful. In terms of how the 232,500 will be spent for the park, that is yet to be decided, and I'm assuming that councillors can talk to the relevant officer about that and provide insight. And then finally, when talking about how long we think the club should pay for the permits for, we've actually suggested that they pay approximately 2,000, because that's how many permits we expect to be taken up in that CPZ area. So that would be 2,000 permits for 5 years. Now, to do that indefinitely, to put that requirement onto them indefinitely, would not be proportionate. And remember, we do have to meet the tests that are in the NPPF, whether it's reasonable, proportionate, and directly related. And I don't think that would be proportionate to require that from the club indefinitely. I think I've covered everything, but thank you.
I think if you could, Ms Holbrook, if you could talk about the zoning. So what the thought was between the 1.2 kilometres. Thanks.
Okay, so at the moment, we don't have parking restrictions in the neighbouring roads, and particularly of concern are those south of the railway, so your Gloucester roads, where you've got and also to the west, where you've got terrace properties. We know there are parking issues. We know residents have been asking for parking restrictions in those areas. We have to get something put in place. Now, the difficulty is, where do you draw the line? Because wherever you draw that line, that next road is going to be impacted. We know that happens. Now, we need to get something in place. It is going to be a full public consultation outside the planning process. So even if this is an approved drawing, for example, that doesn't necessarily mean that is going to be the area. But we needed to confirm the areas that we're concentrating on. So as I said, it's those that don't have driveways that have the biggest impact. You've also got houses that have large driveways, and so that they're not going to be impacted the same. Now, the process for the controlled parking zone is under a traffic regulation order, and that is a long process because it's a legal process. We're looking at about 55 weeks for it to be put in place. So it's a year-long process. So in my view, we need to be getting something in as quickly as possible to protect those residents closest to the stadium. and do our very best to draw that outline of where we're going to put it, and then let's assess it. Because if we remember that the transport strategy is a monitor and manage, we're going to monitor it. How's it going? It's not working. Okay, let's go back. You know, where are the roads that are then going to be affected? Because we won't necessarily know now. However, the club also have the communication strategy. They also have all the bus incentives and the rail incentives to encourage people to leave the car at home and actually travel with alternative modes. So in my view, we need to be getting that controlled parking zone in as soon as possible, and let's monitor and manage. And we have the transport working group with the funding, the £150,000, where if we will probably need to do a second consultation, and then let's see how it goes, and then if we have to widen it, we will. So we looked at the walking areas of, say, 1.25, because they're the areas that we know we have the complaints from at the moment from those existing residents. And so they're the areas that we're concentrating on at the moment. As I said, it's a full public consultation where people can say what they want. However, we just need to undertake that process as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you for that. We've got Mr. Firth, our legal advisor, on the phone, on the screen. Are you there, Mr. Firth? No. Okay.
Yes, Chairman, I am here. Sorry.
Right. There was obviously, we saw in the report that it will be referred to the Secretary of State, the application, whichever decision we make. And there was reference from one of the speakers about a judicial review. Is this, the referral to Secretary of State, is that really the equivalent of a judicial review, or if you can explain that?
No, they're separate matters. Separate matters, Chair. The referral to the Secretary of State is a statutory procedure that has to be undertaken in certain cases, and it gives the Secretary of State a right to call in the decision. In other words, to actually take decision powers away from yourself and to make the decision himself or through an appointed inspector. As I said, that's a matter for the Secretary of State as to whether he chooses to do that or she chooses to do that. A judicial review is different, Chairman. That would be a challenge on a point matters of law in relation to the decision that you decided to take. So they're separate matters, Chair. One's a challenge as a matter of law to the courts, and the other one is a discretion available to the Secretary of State.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. And again, online, if you can remind me the light expert, if you don't mind coming in, please, just to explain, if you put the slide up.
It's Mr. Harris.
Mr. Harris. Hello. Yeah, if you could just explain the checks you do and the data and the outcomes, please.
Absolutely. So my name is Matt Harris. I'm from Development and Light, and I've undertaken an independent review of the applicant submitted daylight and sunlight report that was carried out by GAA. So I've undertaken a thorough review of the report and tested it against the relevant guidance and local and national planning policy on daylight and sunlight. And I've concluded that I'm satisfied with the scope of assessment and the methodologies used within the assessment test criteria, all relevant against the BRE guidelines. And as Ms Summers referred to earlier, the BRE guidelines are there to provide a framework for assessing daylight and sunlight amenity impacts, particularly to residential neighbouring parties, and set out a number of numerical targets. They're not by any means planning policy, but they are there to guide and identify where there might be noticeable impacts. And my review has concluded that there are likely to be some noticeable impacts to certain properties, particularly those in Middleton Gardens, has been made aware by the objectors today. There are, however, mitigating circumstances in relation to those daylight and sunlight effects, which I've identified in my report, namely being that there are some, because of the close proximity to the existing stadium, some windows within those buildings have various overhanging elements, overhanging roof eaves and porchways, etc., that are lowering the existing levels of daylight and sunlight, making them more susceptible to change, which is something that the BRE guidelines openly recognise, and that's why they allow a greater degree of flexibility. What's clear is that there are isolated pockets of transgressions against the test guidelines, but retained levels, generally speaking, are what we consider reasonably good for a suburban environment. Equally, overshadowing assessments have been undertaken on all of the neighbouring gardens, particularly those on Thistleborough Road, all of which meet the BRE guideline criteria for the target test dates in March as well. So that indicates that they should remain sufficiently sunlit throughout the year. So overall, there are identified some pockets of isolated transgressions against guidance. Within the realms of flexibility within the BRE guidelines, in my view, they are of the more acceptable level, but they're not 100% compliant. But there are some isolated pockets, and that's mainly because of those inherent design features that I spoke about.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Harris. All right, so members, if there are questions, please. Councillor Rice.
Yes, just following up from some of the stuff that's been raised by speakers. Middleton Gardens, there was a specific mention about whether the entranceway to Middleton Gardens, I wonder if that's a private road, but I just wanted clarification that in the consultation, even if it's not drawn on the map specifically, would there be opportunity to suggest that that initial part of the driveway is included in the permit scheme? That's the first question.
No, because Middleton Gardens is an adopted highway. It's private, therefore it's down to the owners of that those houses that access to enforce.
Okay, so that's helpful. There may be things that they can do themselves to enforce that.
The right one.
Well, clarification. The controlled parking zone, there was a question about that, whether it's only relevant on the days of matches and not a whole year-round thing.
We like to call it event days because, as Francis had highlighted, that there's other uses at the stadium other than just football. So you have, potential concerts and you have other events as well. So we call it an event day rather than a match day, so that it covers other bases as well.
But just to check, it is only valid on those days.
Oh, it will be open to public consultation. So we're going to go out and ask residents what it is they want, because we have some residents who want, for example, as I mentioned, south of the railway where there are no driveways, in that sort of area, residents want proper residents parking zones. However, other residents don't, and they want event day. But we really need to just run the consultation and get that feedback back from residents about what they want. But it won't just be match days. I think we definitely need to include all events for that. And then we just wait and see what the consultation comes back with.
Just following on from that then, can there be, following on from the consultation, will there be opportunity to have different types of permits, like a residential permit for that area you mentioned, and then event permit for the rest? Or will the whole area be the same permits?
Sorry, I was just seeing if parking were on the call actually, because transport and sustainable travel, we put in the traffic regulation orders. However, it's down to parking to actually enforce. And I just wondered if she was in the call, if she had anything else to say. But yes, what you can do is zones. So you could have zones which is just residents, other zones which is event day. But as I said, it's getting that consultation out to hear from residents what it is that they want.
Just final clarification. So one of the ward councillors was mentioning about the money allocated for park improvements. I think she was also wondering whether we could adjust that so that the money allocated for park improvements can actually be a pot of money allocated for a wider than just the park improvements, so that roughly 200,000 was it, could be used for some simple improvements on the whole route to Folkestone Station. And whether we could add that into a condition or something like that.
Okay, what's in front of us now, it only includes the park itself, which is one of the routes from Folkestone Station. But I think what you may be referring to is maybe if they came up Gloucester Road and improvements to that. We haven't identified, there hasn't been any identification of the need for that, has there?
Will it meet the tax?
Yeah.
You secured the money.
I don't think we can use the money that is secured for the park for anything other than the money for improvements to the park itself. I'm trying to think of whether if there was a separate condition asking for any improvements to Gloucester Road, but we haven't, there's nothing identified as being needed there, is there?
Well, we've got the, obviously the amendments, the section between Kings Park Drive and Gloucester Road. So we've got those improvements that the applicant's undertaking. But further up Gloucester Road, no, but as it's adopted highway, if it did need alterations, then it would be the council, because the money that you've secured is for the park because of the additional hard surfacing and the removal of landscaping.
The other South Car Park as well, at the minute it's not lit, that will be lit. And there are changes at the bottom of the South Car Park, top of Gloucester Road, but there's no other improvements. And I think that would need to be negotiated if we felt that that was needed. Can I just quickly go back to the entrance of Middleton Gardens? Because I just wanted to clarify for myself as well. Is the entrance to Middleton Gardens, is that going to be included within the permits, or is that not adopted either?
It will only be where it is adopted.
Because I think where they were parking was actually on the adopted highway. So
if it's adopted, we could put double yellow lines
Yep.
and parking permits, but from the photograph, oh, sorry. If it's adopted highway, then yes, we can put lines down and restrict parking. Yeah. If it's not adopted highway, no, we can't.
Okay, Councillor Rice.
That's great for the moment. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Lepedwin.
Thank you. I've got two, well, it's really confirmation in both. First of all, confirmation on highways. When you talk about modal shift, for instance, you were talking about increasing bus usage. I think it was from 3% to 6%. So am I right in assuming that's 3% of the current 11,000 capacity and 6% of the projected 20,000 capacity?
8%, yes.
Or 8, whatever the percentage is. So it's a lot bigger increase numerically than it sounds from the percentages.
Yes, that's correct. So we're going from a 3% aiming for an 8%. And
Yes.
then so you're going from, at the moment, sort of 305 people to 1,776.
Thank you. And the other one is to the planning officer. I'm getting the impression, I hope correctly, that all these improvements and extras are going to be paid for by the club. Is there any expenditure falling on BCP? And if so, what is it and how much?
what improvements are you, do you mean the bus stops, the shuttle bus?
Yes, anything.
Everything is on the club, and it's all in the section 106.
So BCP is not going to be financially liable for anything?
No.
Great, great, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gillett.
Yeah, it's just a very quick thing. One of the representations suggested that the shuttle bus was just going between the train stations, but there's a shuttle bus from Avonwood School as well, where the parking is going to be. Is that right? No.
No, that's within very close walking distance. So it's actually probably quicker to walk from Avonbourne School to the stadium than it would be for the shuttle bus, and also from the Sovereign Centre. So they're the two main places that are just outside of the CPZ, as we've seen on the screen before, where car parking is being promoted. So don't come closer to the stadium, go to there or get the shuttle bus.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Martin.
Actually got before it, but they're only little questions. One of the speakers living in the gardens, Middleton Gardens, suggested a compensation scheme for loss of amenity. Could we make that a condition, or is that not possible?
No, that falls outside of planning.
Yeah, I thought it might. Just double checking. Yeah. The other thing is there's a lot of very pleasant social, talking about benefits to the community. There's a lot of nice social areas within the club, within the on the west stand, like there's bars with terraces, which have got a really nice overlook. Could we make it a condition that they make this more for public use on non-match days? Because that would be a real amenity then.
So they are already, sorry, were you finished there?
Yeah.
They are already used for public events. So like the prom is held there. We have conferences there. So they are already in use by the public. I think what you mean is, can residents go and have a drink there?
Yeah, it would make it a nice amenity.
It's not something that I've discussed with the club. I don't think we could condition it, because then it's conditioning their sort of commercial, how they operate commercially.
Yeah.
So I don't think we can do that.
There again, I didn't think so, but I thought I'd ask.
Thank you.
Yeah. 1.5 kilometre residence permit zone. Is that the same distance as we got from the seafront? In summer, I can't remember what the distance is. The towaway zone? Is it bigger or smaller?
That's a question I don't know the answer to. I can message someone online and find out that answer and come back to you.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact amount, but that would seem reasonable, and have it as a towaway zone, because people don't mind paying the fine, but they would mind if the car was towed away if they come out the match or their event. The thing is, as well, is I've mentioned this on loads of times. Folkestone Station. Basically, when people come out of Folkestone Station, they've got to walk right around. They've got to go down Christchurch Road and then double back on themselves up Wheaton Road. And I was wondering, there is some trees at the back of Wheaton Road residences, and I wondered if there was a room to make rear access. I wonder if this has been explored, make a rear access to the station, and so that people can walk straight along the back of Wheaton Road and into the park that way, if that would be feasible, if that's been explored, because that would make it a lot. It would, if you make things easy for people, it's more likely to change behaviour.
Yeah, I think I've actually discussed this with you before. And I'm racking my brains as to what the answer was. We just did discuss it. We discussed it with Network Rail as well. I think that would have put, if we did that, it would put more emphasis on people walking through the park. And we didn't want to do that because, that's going to have even more of an impact on the park. We wanted to direct people, or I say we, sorry, I mean the club, want to direct people up Gloucester Road and using those routes. So that's why we didn't pursue that. Also, obviously, cost as well. And I don't think Network Rail were amenable. I can't remember, to be honest, what Network Rail said about it, but I know it was discounted, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Slade.
Thank you. So we've got about 9,000 new seats. Can you give me an idea as to how many of those are going to be for the away fans? Is it around 2,000? And it's that southeast corner, isn't it? Well, they're on the east stand in that corner, but I guess it's going to be east, southeast.
It's 10% of the full amount. Now I'm trying to do the maths in my head right now.
If members are happy, if we can call the football club in to clarify that point, is that okay? So if you could just cover that point, please.
Currently, we set at about 1,350. We have to be 10% of the 20,000, call it 300. So just a little bit over 2,000. So an additional kind of 650.
And the location? The location will be?
The location would be in the southeast corner, would be about 400 of those, and then in the couple of rows of the extension.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying. Councillor Slade, did you? Okay. Councillor Canavan.
Thank you, Chair. Couple of questions, if I may. Firstly, could you tell me who within the council is going to be deciding where that £232,000, what it's going to be spent on? Who decides that? That would be good to know. Also, what I don't quite understand is if you, I understand the concept of going out for consultation as soon as possible, trying to get some kind of parking arrangement sorted out as soon as possible. What I don't understand is what ability then we would subsequently have to go back to the club and say, well, do you know what? We want you to do X more than we've already agreed in here. I don't understand what the retrospective leverage we have. You know, if we agree this as per your report, how can we go back to the club and say, well, we want you to do some more because this isn't delivering for us. So I would like to understand that, if I may. The other point on the 1.25 kilometre suggestion. So whether it's event day permits or whether it's permanent resident permits, putting that to one side, 1.25 kilometres is not going to do it. So frankly, you're wasting your time going out for public consultation if it's an indicative, if that's an indicative distance, because those of us who actually do represent the community know what the report, what the response is that you're going to get to that, because it's not, as Councillor Kelly mentioned earlier on, that the expectation is that that distance should be greater. So it's going to be a very, I think, careful job that you're going to have to do in terms of the consultation, because if there are any kind of heavy hints that that's what it is going to be, then I think you're going to be treading on quite difficult ground, because that's not going to cut it, in my view.
Okay, a few things there.
I've written down who decides. Oh yes, I remember where that money gets spent. So at the minute, Martin Whitchurch, he is the main officer. Whether he has to take any of this through council or anything like that, I don't know. He is on the call. So if we want him to come in, and yeah,
So I think that'd be useful.
Martin, are you there? This will test whether he's listening. Oh, he was there before. Okay. Okay. It's Martin Whitchurch. I can't clarify right now what the process is that he has to go through. Yeah, sorry. In terms of the transport working group, well, I think you were referring to the transport working group when you say what leverage do we have to go back to the club and get them to do something because something isn't working. So we have the transport working group that is co-chaired by the council and the club. This is what's proposed in the section 106. It will have ward councillors on it. It'll have people like Dorset Police, Network Rail, Morbus, etc. And essentially, it's their job to decide what issues, prioritise what issues need to be addressed. And there's a pot of money of 150,000 to draw from to resolve these issues. When it comes to the permits, what is secured or what is proposed to be secured is for 5 years only at this point. That is not up for debate in the transport working group at the minute. 1.25k. I appreciate a few people are saying this is not going to work. I'm sure Joss will come in on this in a minute. I suppose we have to stop somewhere, and where is that line that we need to stop? If it's a case of you feel 1.5k would work, then perhaps we consult on the 1.5k area. That's a suggestion that we could move with. but we, after much deliberation, we thought the 1.25 was acceptable. I'll hand over to Joss.
Thank you, Francis. And also the club have agreed to help fund the cost of the permits for this zone. So if we do increase that zone, that doesn't include the cost of the permits. So we do need to keep that into consideration. And as I said, we need to protect those residents that don't have the driveways and are at the closest location to the stadium. And if people are parking further away and walking in, then it is dispersing where those vehicles are. Ultimately, we want people to cycle and take the bus and rail to the stadium, but if they choose not to, then they are distributed further away rather than concentrated really close to the stadium. And then, you know, there's been a few comments about, you know, parking either double yellow lines or junctions or blocking driveways. That is enforceable now. So if we are going to get more vehicles in the area, it does need to be enforced. And then if it is distributed further away where people have driveways, they're not impacted as much as those residents who do not have driveways. So therefore, that's why I'm saying that we need to get the ball rolling and protect those residents closest to the stadium.
Carry on. Thank you very much, Chair. So the £232,000 for whatever you can do in Kings Park, whatever Martin wants to do in Kings Park, and you mentioned earlier on that you didn't see that money being spent on anything beyond the park, which I kind of get. But there's also some money allocated in here in relation to Folkestone Station. So I guess my question is whether that amount of money, I think it got increased in the supplementary from £100,000 to £110,000, whether that's a figure that can be increased in terms of doing improvements at Folkestone Station, which would make it easier for more visitors to stop and use that station as access to the stadium.
Thank you for that question. Now, the £110,000 has been agreed between South Western Rail, Network Rail, and the applicant as the mitigation that's been identified that is required for this application. So the increased number of rail users, as I mentioned, it needs the widening of those front doors and in the widening of that ticket hall. So and the wayfinding. So the 110,000 is what's been agreed with between third parties, between the rail operator and the applicant. So that's what's before us today. I don't feel that we can add extra because that's not what Network Rail and South Western Rail have asked for.
Well, yes, I understand that because it's their land. But what if we condition it for improvements in the immediate vicinity? I think, as Councillor Connolly was mentioning it, you know, the Folkestone Green opposite the station, the point that Councillor Martin's just made about the rear of where the station is, would we be able to apply some additional funding or seek additional funding from the club as a condition for improvements outside of the railway land, what I assume is BCP land?
Would that be for the rail operators to be making those improvements?
Well, they wouldn't. It's not their land, is it? So, the situation that we have at the minute, as I understand it, is that in an ideal world, what we want to do is to improve Folkestone Station to maximise the number of visiting fans, to use that station as access to the stadium. Good. So what are the obstacles to that? One is the Network Rail, South West Rail, ability or willingness to do anything to have more trains stop there, and the infrastructure of the station itself to accommodate that number of extra visitors. that's not something that we can condition because it's not our land. But it strikes me that we're not doing enough. That's not doing enough to ensure that we are able to accommodate more people coming through that train station. Because if we can't get South West Rail to do anything, notwithstanding that the government's given them 2.6 million quid to put the lifts in, and you know, we are at their, well, it's their decision as to whether or not they stop more trains there. So I'm asking about what we can do as a BCP authority to improve the infrastructure in the surrounding area of Folkestone Station, to improve access from that station to the stadium. Because bearing in mind that, you know, I understand that the £232,000 isn't going to be able to do that because it's not technically in Kings Park.
That's correct. The 232,000 is for Kings Park because of the additional hard surfacing that had to go in and the road improvements, so the loss of the landscaping, so that was the mitigation. Now, the off-site works, which is on screen now, is what we will deal with under a highway works agreement, so section 278, which includes wayfinding. So again, from Folkestone Station, improving those walking routes to the stadium, as well as the bus stop upgrades, including real-time information and new shelters. And then we've got the contributions up at the north. We mentioned Wessex Way, and also the Thistlebarrow Road crossing. So there's nothing at the moment to improve the area outside Folkestone Station other than what's been agreed between the applicant and the operator, so South Western Rail. So there's nothing else proposed as part of this application.
But could we?
It wouldn't meet the tests. What is in front of us now meets the tests and makes this scheme acceptable in planning terms. The monies for the park are secured to offset the harm that the park's going to experience through obviously visual harm, but also with predominantly the uplift in footfall and cycles and wheels and all the rest of it through the park. Improvements to Gloucester Road, improvements from Folkestone Station, none have been identified as being necessary and needed for this scheme, so it wouldn't meet the tests. Everything that's in front of us does meet the tests.
Okay, Mr. Gould.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can I just add a little bit to what Francis is saying there? Francis mentioned the word test there. There are 6 tests that are applicable to planning conditions, and she's mentioned a couple of them there. But there's another one that's about it being reasonable. Any mitigation has to be directly linked in terms of land use. It has to be attributable to the development that's taking place. So you've heard that there's the need to widen the doors at Folkestone train station, improve the circulation within, do some works in the park. That's because they're directly linked to the development. So any mitigation has to be proportionate, and it has to be reasonable. What we can't do is just see the football club as some vehicle for going after a pot of money to do general improvements in an area. They have to be directly linked and necessary to make the development acceptable.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Martin.
Yeah, okay, it's one I'm not quite sure about. I understand what you're saying about this part of the it's got to follow on. But I was wondering about Gloucester Road itself gets quite a lot of the roads around there are quite dirty. The gutters aren't cleaned and things, and there's quite a lot of rubbish already distributed in on the bridge, on the railway bridge as you come out of the park. And there's quite a lot of litter as well in that bit leading up to the park. Obviously, if we've got more people visiting, there's going to be more of that. Who's going to be liable for cleaning up after matches and events? And will this be within 1.25 kilometres as well? Assuming people will be walking those distances, they'll be walking and eating and dropping, and can we make that a condition that there's a clean-up operation afterwards, please?
Again, I don't think that would meet the tests. There's already an issue. Dorset Police are aware. It's more of an antisocial behaviour issue. There's plenty of bins, for instance, when I've been wandering around, I've noticed. So no, that's not something that planning can really get involved in.
Yeah, it's just my worry is it's going to get worse if you've got all those people being encouraged to go up Gloucester Road. It's going to get far, far worse.
Perhaps the club can put something out in terms of communications on that, but that would be outside. I would just implore them to do that now. It's outside of the planning process. Yeah.
Thank you. We heard about, did a park and ride get explored? If you could cover that. And then I'm looking at the condition 10 about travel plan and staff travel plan. Is there something about on match days that staff, including players, car share or get a bus in rather than take up spaces? Thank you.
Yeah, so the park and ride, the big question is where, because Kings Park is the park and ride location, traditionally used for the Air Festival, and so where would you locate it? And also, a park and ride's not really proportionate to the scale of this development, because don't forget, we've got 2 railway stations very, very close by, Folkestone and Bournemouth Station. We have the regular bus routes where we've only got 3% of fans currently using. The operator has shown there's plenty of capacity. So we really need to shift our minds away from this private vehicle as being the default, because you go and visit other stadiums up and down the country, you travel sustainably. So this is what it needs to happen here. So no, we didn't agree or, you know, look at a park and ride because there isn't the location. You know, Bournemouth fans are very, very close. It's not like other Premier League clubs where you'll travel up and down the country to follow. We have a very, very close-knit fan base. So I don't see why public bus wouldn't be a reasonable option for people to take, and therefore no park and ride is needed.
Thank you, Francis.
Can I just come back to the principle of this scheme as well? Just to remember that this is an uplift, or going to result in an uplift of around about 9,000, circa 9,000 extra fans visiting, but only over a maximum of 48 days of the year. And the match doesn't last all day. The match is what, a couple hours? You've got a couple hours beforehand where the parking issues, the congestion is going to be an issue. You got about an hour afterwards, maybe 2 hours, depending, again, where the congestion and that is an issue. The majority of the year, there's not this issue. So I just wanted to refocus on that and make that clear. Also, I do have Martin Whitchurch on. Yeah, thank you.
So, Councillor Canavan, if you want to ask that question for Mr. Whitchurch, if you can remember it.
Martin, bluntly, what are you going to spend that £232,000 on?
Yeah, thank you. Afternoon, everybody. Afternoon, committee. So we've obviously only recently, or relatively recently, agreed that sum with the club. That sum was derived that we put together a fairly lengthy list of kind of aspirational improvements that could be made across Kings Park with the planning colleagues. We've worked with the club in terms of making, sort of making that proportionate and sort of linked to the development. So that's primarily about mitigating the impact of the increased footfall. So sort of park infrastructure, bins, benches, bollards, lighting where possible. So the important infrastructure that makes that would sort of effectively support the increased footfall from the stadium expansion, add the resilience to the park that it will need. And then in addition to that, we want to use the money to improve the current facilities. So the club were keen that some of the money went towards Clarence Road play area. That's not currently in our funded plan for play programme, but we'll look to see what other funding we can bring forward to match into that to make that a viable sort of project to take forward as soon as we can. And then it's linking into other sort of park infrastructure that will make a difference, that will kind of again sustain sort of the quality and uplift the quality of Kings Park for the future. So tree planting schemes, making sure that areas of trees that might be getting towards mature and end of life, we're planting the next generation to give us that canopy cover and kind of screening of the stadium into the future. So we haven't done the revised sort of detailed work yet, but there's also, you know, that money is really significant in helping us make a difference at Kings Park when, yes, we're stretched financially. So we'll see what we can match that into and whether we can multiply that out and add greater value into what's coming forward from those contributions as well. So work to do, and we want to understand from stakeholders and our park users as well where those improvements are best made and what they might be. So yeah, there's some work to do to understand that on the ground and in detail, but broadly it's about park quality and improving that for future users, really.
Okay, appreciate that, Mr. Witchers. Councillor Canavan, are you happy with that? Okay, so are there any other questions from members? Okay, so we have been going for over 2 hours. So do members want a break, or are you happy to carry on? Okay, so we will take a 5-minute break if members don't engage with anyone before coming back. Thank you. Okay, we're back in the meeting for the planning committee. If Ms Summers, did you want to come up on some other point?
Yes. Firstly, just to go back to Councillor Martin's point on litter, I have conditioned, or at least I thought I had conditioned, a litter strategy. Now, this is for around the stadium itself. So I don't know if I want to spend the time looking through my conditions now to see if it's there, but if it is not, it's something that is meant to be there, and I need to put that in if we could be given the authority to do that. In terms of litter wider afield, I've been given a link to some fines, basically fixed penalty notices for littering. So it can be reported online to the, again, outside of the planning process. But we do have that in place. And then I also wanted to come back on Councillor Laporta-Van's point from a while ago where she says, is the council going to be liable for any payments? I just want to make this really clear. So the stuff in the section 106, the obligations, that's for the club to pay. You'll note that part of that includes the cycle path. Now, they have to maintain that for 12 months. After that, it's basically, it gets completed and it's handed over to the council. Now, we haven't conditioned maintenance for longer than that, but outside of the planning process in their lease, because it's going to be on their land, they will have to maintain that. In terms of the crossings, and Joss, do correct me if I'm wrong, the crossings, once they're done, again, they will be in BCP ownership and it'll be up to us to actually sort out. So the implementation and all of the obligations in the section 106, yes, that's being paid for by the club, but I just wanted to make those small points there. And that was it, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. So, Councillor Rice.
Yeah, I just wanted, I remembered one more clarification. We raised it on the site visit, but I just wanted to reiterate it in terms of the decorations on the hard standing and the representation of females in football. Just some clarification on what is in the conditions on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned that there would be hard and soft landscaping, and a lot of this is secured by condition because we haven't, well, the club haven't looked at the final designs yet. So we've got condition 21, which talks about external furniture. So that's your hostile vehicle mitigation, any kind of benches, planting, things like that. And we also have, no, sorry, that is it, yes. Yes, sorry, that also is public art in there. Now, I can easily amend that condition to say that it needs to represent all ages and genders.
I think that would be very helpful, yeah.
Yeah, lovely.
Councillor Martin.
Just on that point, actually, under the Equality Act, there's lots of different things. So I'm thinking about there's quite a lot of disabled sports people as well. So
yeah,
yeah.
Yep, I can put some writing in that reflects that.
Okay, so if there's no further questions, we're now going to debate. So I appreciate all the officers contributing to this, and obviously one of the first slides we saw today was about the main considerations, the economic benefits, social value, environmental benefits, the multiple uses for the community and the club. But obviously balanced against that is the concerns about neighbouring amenities of residents and of course of traffic and parking. So yeah, obviously we've heard both sides, the explanations, the exploring of alternative sites for this development, the need for the development from a football club and the community. So who wants to go? Councillor Canavan?
Thank you, Chair. I probably just need to preface these remarks by saying that I am a councillor for Boscombe West, and the Sovereign Centre is in Boscombe West. So talking to the coastal bid, talking to the businesses that might operate outside of the Sovereign Centre is not talking to the community. These people do not represent the community. Some of us were elected to do that. And I have a concern about the Transport Working Group, because if you're talking to the great and the good, you're still not talking to the community. And even putting a couple of councillors on there isn't gonna make that balance work. So I think there's a fundamental shift required if the club are serious about engaging with the community, because they've got to do better than they are at the minute, in my personal view. Nobody doubts, well, I certainly don't doubt, that the importance of this development is massive, massive for the future of the club, massive for Bournemouth, and the expansion is a good thing because it helps the club and it helps them meet all of these requirements that they have with the Premier League and the European requirements. That all of that's a good thing, but it has massive consequences, and we just need to think about how we manage those consequences. That's what I guess what we're here to do, because it has consequences on the infrastructure of our parks. You know, what's what we've been talking about in terms of Kings Park. Yeah, the very fact that the expansion is happening will bring in thousands more people. And on the one hand, that's a good thing because economically it's a good thing, but somehow we have to manage that against the balance and the impact that those additional pairs of feet will have, or wheelchairs will have. So that's what's in my head, and whether or not we've got that balance right. And it's also about trying to ensure that the impact on those residential properties that are close to the stadium, what we can do to help them not suffer detriment, and I still thinking about how we might be able to improve that situation, but also the parking, and the parking really bothers me because I just don't think 1.25 kilometres is going to be enough, whether it's match days or otherwise, because we already have a problem now where the figures that we've seen, about 70 whatever it was % of people using cars, and 1 point whatever it is, less than 2 anyway, people per car. That's the pattern that has been created, and absolutely I think we all accept that it needs some kind of modal shift to do that. But in order to be able to do that, we have to put the wherewithal behind it. So that's about the public, that's about improvements in public transport. It's about it's about how we can improve bus journeys, train journeys, to wean people off using their cars, and the more rigorous we can be in terms of our parking enforcement to say you will not park here, is frankly has got to be something that we need to think about how we might be able to be more robust about doing that, because that's what is going to, I think, shift people's behaviour in terms of not parking in residential areas when they really don't need to. So those are just my concerns, Chair, without boring you too much longer.
Thank you. Councillor Gillett.
Yeah, I think, well, actually, firstly, thank the officers for an exceptionally detailed report. In respect of the parking, a line has to be drawn somewhere, and there are some advantages to the 1.25 kilometres in that there is an active application currently for a 1,600 space car park, 0.9 of a kilometre away from the stadium, for a car park which is only going to be used on weekdays. They might want to make an extra £500,000 a year renting it out and shuttle busing people down the other way, and that's obviously that application has been called in as well. There's another 800 just within the vicinity zone down at the Little Down car park as well. So there's quite a lot of scope within that, and if you go much beyond that limit, then there isn't much additional scope. There aren't many sort of large car parks which sit sort of just outside of that. Outside of that zone. So I think there's enough scope within that to be able to manage that going forward, and that's up to councillors to work with, like those employers and maybe BH Live and things, to say how can we get those working together. So I think the line had to be drawn somewhere, and I think actually the line does seem to be about right within that 1.25. The other thing is, there seems to be a narrative from some of the objections that this expansion could never have been expected. But in 2012, when those properties were being bought, AFC Bournemouth was already 33% smaller than you would expect for a League One club. And if we accept the proposal today, it's going to be the second smallest stadium in the Premier League, and by far the smallest of any English team that's qualified for Europe. So I can't accept that this is sort of come out completely out of the blue for people, that this stadium was going to get a lot bigger. Given that this is probably the most significant investment in infrastructure that I'm aware of this decade, and it's an economic and social environmental opportunity for us, although I'm open to people popping in pretty structured amendments to this. I'm very much in favour of this as it stands, but obviously I will listen to what people may want to add to that.
Councillor Slade.
Thank you. I support a lot of that, Councillor Gillett. I'm going to start with the advertisement. I don't think it's right or proper to condition what the club are going to put up as advertisements. We have to remember that this is a male stadium. The female have their stadium. They have their facilities. Growing up in a household with 4 females, and the majority of my team, bar one, are females. If I went to a female stadium, I would want female advertisement. I wouldn't want lots of male figures. I'd want it to be very much woman-based. I don't see how it is right or proper to do it. I don't know how you're going to police it. I don't know how we're going to enforce it. I don't think it's lawful or precise. So I'll start with that. And I'll vomit some things out here. I recognise the impact on the neighbours. It's not 100% policy compliant, but the economic and socio benefit it's going to bring to the area, the majority, the benefit has to be the larger group of people. And I'm aware that there's going to be impact on a few, but there is got to be a tilted balance for the favour of the more. We can't forget the club are putting £1 million plus into this in Section 106. Plus there's operational costs, plus there's fan zone discounts. And then going to the seats, we've got 9,000 new seats. We've got, let's say, 7,000 towards the local residents, where you can have a mix of family members, friends, children. So a significant number of those aren't going to be actually in vehicles. There's going to be car sharing. Yes, we're pushing this public transports development plan. The problem's already there. I don't believe this is going to really significantly impact on the problem that we've already got. The problem's there. So we need to try and deal with that separately, but I can't see how there's enough conditions, there's enough, the conditions are there for the club at the moment. I do think they've worked incredibly hard. I think the officers have worked incredibly hard. I'm not a Bournemouth fan, I'm an Arsenal fan, so thank you for what they did at the weekend. But I think we've got to work with them. This is such a big thing for the town, for the area. I recognise the impacts, as I said, and it's not 100% policy compliant, but I'm just against conditioning any more than we've already done.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Pedro.
Yes, I just, first of all, echoing the commendation for all the work that the officers have done, and the presentation today, and the site visit. I mean, it was all top notch. So thank you very much. I'm not a football supporter, although I do keep abreast of the scores, just as sort of general knowledge, trivia. Today is the first time I've been really anywhere near a stadium, so I'm not biased. But it seems to me that listening, reading the documents, listening to everything, visiting this morning, that the club have tried to address all the concerns. particularly on the parking issues, and the additional measures being taken, and the provision of shuttle buses and reduced costs on season tickets and all that sort of thing. Yes, I'm concerned about the height, particularly of the North Stand, affecting Thistlebarrow, but we've been told that maybe the photo we were shown was not entirely accurate. The experts on daylight and light seem to find things acceptable. So on the whole, I think I'm happy to make a motion that we accept this.
Okay, that's a proposal to accept as set out. Councillor Gillett.
I'm happy to second that.
Any other speakers on the point? I think it just needs to be mentioned that obviously the football club have heard the depositions, they've had consultations, no doubt there'll be more consultations on parking and neighbours, but as I said, they need to lead by example. They maybe tongue-in-cheek players car sharing, but we're losing 150 odd spaces on site, so it needs to be leading by example. And similarly, I know comms to supporters will be essential, and again we are talking about the Premiership and the expectation of a club being in the Premiership, and we want you to be the Premier club, certainly for this area. So I think again it's important that we work on, and as we've heard from the officers, I think the Transport Working Group will be a moving feast. I think taking on board again the feedback, councillors have to be involved, other community leaders will have to be involved, so we do get that widespread of involvement and views. Again, from day one, from the initial expansion, probably from September, the council need to commit to better enforcement of roads. And again, it works on the involvement of residents and councillors to report cars blocking their way or parking on dangerous corners. And we need to be, as a council, we need to be upfront and make sure, again, to educate people that, yeah, we won't tolerate this. You will be fined and there will be repercussions. So I think, yeah, the council have a big place to pay. We will get the benefit, the community will get the benefit, but we need to educate people. And we've got to, like the club will learn from other clubs around the country, what works well with people movement, how you get that shift. And I'm glad the bus company are definitely on board. Obviously, there may be movement more that the rail company potentially could be, but I think this gives us a great opportunity. But as I say, we heard the conditions are stringent. They leave flexibility that we can work with the club, we can work with the council, work with other partners to make it stronger. But yet, taking on board the comments about the neighbours and the sunlight, yes, it will impact them. But I think we have to look at the bigger picture. So is there any other debate? So we've got the proposal from Councillor Pedevin, seconded by Councillor Gillett. If we can just have the officer confirm, Mr. Gould.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As usual, just before members go to a vote, just a bit of clarification. So we've got a move on the table to support the officer's recommendation. There was some talk about 5-10 minutes ago about one of the conditions, number 21, to do with public art. Can I just seek clarification whether members are looking to amend that condition or not? And also, there was also in the debate talk about litter. Mrs. Summers mentioned that there may be a condition. I'm not entirely sure there is. So would members like to give consideration to adding a condition requiring a litter strategy to be prepared and then approved by the local planning authority?
Okay, thank you for that guide. Councillor Pedevin.
Yeah, a litter strategy for the club to take action, you're saying? Yeah.
Yes,
Yes. I mean, yes, I would find that acceptable. Don't know whether my seconder would.
And similarly, councillor Pedvin, on the point about the public art internally, are you happy to leave that for the club, or would you want a condition?
Yes, they've heard views, and I'm happy to leave that to the club and hope they act responsibly.
Okay, councillor Canavan.
I would like to see something more specific in there about the composition of this working group, because at the moment it's a bit vague. So if we could, I don't necessarily mean today, but I think that should be an open access.
Yeah. Councillor, Mrs. Summers.
I've been promoted again. Yes, that's something more. I mean, it is in the section 106, but if you want me to put more word, yeah, the ward councillors are invited. Are you talking about wider than the ward councillors? Surrounding ward councillors. I would probably limit it to that, suggest.
Councillor Canavan.
Well,
it would need to be that, I think.
And can I just come in on condition 21? There is planning, there's the MPPF paragraphs 98 and 135F that does talk about creating places that are inclusive. So it does meet policy tests to pop that into the condition. It's already an existing condition about external furniture. I could just specify that it should be reflective of an inclusive in the public art. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Rice.
Yeah, I just wanted to come back on the aspect of condition 21 and the public art. The stadium is seen as representative of the club as a whole. It is not, well, in my view and my understanding, it's not representative of just men's part of the football club. And so I can see your points, but I think that it is it's seen as a public venue, and it's important that everybody is represented within all aspects of that stadium. And I think there's a lot of work being done within the FA that realises that this is, it may seem fairly minor, but actually it's really important for the next generation to be able to see themselves in art and photo projection. So I'm really keen to have it included in the condition. As we've already heard, it is part of our normal policy as well.
Okay, so I'm trying to call up condition 31 about the public art. 21. So what does it actually specify?
Yeah.
Who actually determines?
Bear with me while I share the screen. And then put the right thing on the screen. So condition 21 is actually, I've actually put amendments to that already in the addendum. So here you'll see. The furniture will contain a variety of elements to contribute to the overall public realm. So this is asking for details of external furniture, including hostile vehicle mitigation and public art. Some additional planting should be provided, and the furniture should contain a variety of elements to contribute to the overall public realm around the stadium. So within this public realm section, public art section, it could be, I don't know what the exact, I can't think of the exact wording off the top of my head, but paragraph 135F of the MPPF would support some sort of inclusive design, and it is good for the younger generations to be inspired essentially by this. So, and I think it would make it more inclusive. So yeah, happy with that suggestion if everyone else.
Yeah, so Councillor Perivin, so are you happy that that existing condition, what the officers made note, that it captures what Councillor Rice is trying to do?
I think so. I mean, I may be misinterpreting public art, because this morning we saw they were photos basically. I was assuming that public art would include things like a mural or something like that. So you know, not just photos of footballers, something a bit wider. Yeah.
Councillor Gillett, are you happy?
Yeah, I'm happy.
So,
I'm happy with that. And actually, one of the points I was going to make on that was that actually, when it was talked about this morning, the club said they were happy to incorporate it as well. So I don't think we're pushing it beyond. It's not. I think it's important to include it, and it is something which the club said they were happy with as well. So I think that's okay.
Just to come back on that as well, I've just noticed that this condition doesn't actually have an implementation timeline on it. So this is one of the examples of how, if this is to be approved, it would be helpful if it could be delegated to head of planning, so I could just refine these and make sure that I was under time pressure essentially to get this through, and there's a couple of little silly mistakes like that I need to tidy up.
and with regards to Councillor Candlevan's part about the membership of the Transport Working Group, it's not a condition, it's just if you're happy that it's incorporated in 106, yeah.
It's in the section 106, we have the list of people, so I've got ward councillors in there at the minute, we could put surrounding as well.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gore, did you want to come back?
Yeah, only to summarise again, Chair, just so that we're absolutely clear what members will be voting on shortly. So am I right in now thinking that Mrs. Summers talked about the addendum sheet and the changes that she'd made to condition 21? It feels like we need to get delegated power back to the head of planning operations for us to work up some additional wording into that condition to talk about adding some inclusive art and wording to ensure that it's actually delivered. Suggestion was also that members might want to add another condition relating to a litter strategy. And then finally, just to remind members that when they vote, they're also voting to accept the addendum amendments.
Okay, thank you for that. And
Yeah,
Councillor
happy with all that.
What was the wording on the litter? Have you got suggested wording?
Oh, now you put me on the spot. No, it's a short answer. It will be details of a litter strategy to be submitted by the football club, and then it might specify certain areas, certainly within the park, and then obviously to be approved by the local planning authority, and then it will be implemented, and there might be something in there about reviewing it as well.
Okay, thank you for that. So the proposal, Councillor Heatherman's happy.
I'm happy with all those.
Yeah, Councillor Gillett, a seconder. And any members who you put?
It says inclusive. It doesn't. That doesn't necessarily. It doesn't say women on there. It just says inclusive. Are we happy with that?
Inclusive is a known term to include women and maybe disabled, ethnicity, all aspects, isn't it? I think. Am I right?
That's how I would interpret it.
Okay, so if we're clear on what we're voting for, and if there's no debate, we're show of hands now. If you are approving as per the application laid out with the amendment of the litter, show now to approve.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 7 in favour.
Okay, that is unanimous. That is approved as set out with those amendments. So thank you for your time, and thank you for your work and efforts on that. And we look forward to hearing good news from a club. Thank you. End of meeting.